wanted to respond to this video. Who wrote the Quran? What sources were used? So let's just go quickly one by one.
Let's look at several examples. The first is a story about Abraham. In the Quran, in Surah 21, Abraham smashes his father's idols during his youth in Babylon, and then is thrown into a fire by the king as a punishment. But God saves him, and he survives unharmed. Now, although this story is not found in the Bible, it is in fact found in a text that predates the Quran. It comes from a commentary on the book of Genesis written by a rabbi sometime between 300 and 500 CE. So it's certainly possible that Muhammad was familiar with the story. Another example.
All right. So first of all, the part that bothers me about this video is like all the comments and everything acting like this guy's a genius. First of all, this is a very old argument. Some Catholic made the same argument in 1905, William St. Clair Tisdale, right? And it comes from him originally. You find them, using the Talmud and stuff like that, saying, "Oh, look," and he even uses the same. So you're gonna notice this is there, the seven sleepers, and the Virgin Mary. So this guy's just using this argument from the Catholic guy 100 years ago and acting like as if as if this YouTuber discovered it, which he didn't. Now, another thing is he mentioned the book Genesis Rubba, right? Now, one of the issues with it is that the oldest manuscript available is from the 12th century. So how are we going to rely on something from the 12th century and say, oh, but it was written in the 400? Maybe there was an original version 400, but we can't really say for sure that it had what was in the Quran, right? Because the earliest version we have is in the 12th century, you know? So let's continue.
Is a story about Mary, the mother of Jesus. In the Quran, in Surah 19, Mary comes across a palm tree while she is pregnant. In order to feed his mother, Jesus performs a miracle from within the womb, causing figs to fall from the tree when shaken. Again, this story is not found in any of the four canonical Gospels. However, as I mentioned in my episode about the Gospels, there were actually many other Gospels, ones that did not make it into the New Testament. One of these is known as Pseudo Matthew. In Pseudo Matthew, a very similar story is told about Mary and the palm tree. The only difference is that in Pseudo Matthew, the palm tree actually bends its branches so that Mary can reach the figs. Now, Pseudo Matthew was written around the same time as Muhammad lived, but in a very different location. So I think it's unlikely that Muhammad got the story directly from Pseudo Matthew, or that Pseudo Matthew got it directly from Muhammad. What's more likely is that this was simply a well known story that was floating around at the time, and that both authors were familiar with it.
Now, at least for that one, he admits that that one's more speculative. But actually, if you look at the Gospel of Pseudo Matthew, some people dated it 800 AD, some people 600, some 625. You know what I mean? Like it was written, like the prophet died in 632, right? So, and this guy 690. The point is that you can't really you can't really conclude anything with that. It was written just about the same time. Sometimes some people say later. You know what I mean? So you can't really come to a conclusion based on that.
My third example is the story of the sleepers in the cave. In the Quran, in Surah 18, it tells a story about some men who were being persecuted for their beliefs. They take refuge in a cave where God causes them to go into a deep sleep, one that miraculously lasts over 300 years. They therefore end up escaping the persecution. This story is actually a well-known Christian legend that appears in multiple sources predating the Quran. The earliest one being that of the Syrian poet Jacob of Sirah. One more.
Okay, so the thing with this one is that the Quran never claims that this is an original story, right? So the way it's told in the Quran, it's as if the people he's speaking to already know the story. And they let me explain. Let me give you better details. Hold on. Right here is the events. So it says they will say there were three, fourth of them being their dog, and they will say there were five, right? And these are all these people who are guessing. So obviously they already knew the story. The Quran's not saying that this story originated with Prophet Muhammad, right? It's pretty obvious that there were people there who knew the story, and he was just telling the story with more details, right? And then we have the last one.
Example. Later in the same surah, Surah 18, the Quran mentions a man called Dhul-Qarnayn, a phrase that literally means the two-horned one. According to the Quran, Dhul-Qarnayn travels to the east to a mountainous region where a group of people are being persecuted by two evil nations, known as Gog and Magog. He helps them by building a giant wall to keep Gog and Magog at bay. This story is very similar to a well known legend about Alexander the Great that was very common in ancient times. In fact,
See, this is the part that bothers me. Look how he says 90 CE. Now
Alexander the
let's
Great
investigate
was
that.
often depicted as having horns, hence the name Dual Carne, the two horned one. What
Now let's find it here. I know I'm using Wikipedia, but it uses other sources, so don't worry. Now look, these works include the Syriac legend of Alexander, the composition which is commonly attributed to North Mesopotamian around 629 and 630. Like that's pretty late. Prophet Muhammad died 632. You know what I mean? However, some have argued that it was from early in the 6th century, 7th century. Now, here's the interesting part. Has been found to closely resemble the story of Dhul-Qarnayn. Now, if you look at this, the Syriac legend contains additional motifs not found in the earliest Greek romance, including the episode where Alexander builds a wall against Gog and Magog. And it comes from this book, so don't tell me, oh, Wikipedia. It's from a history book. The episode of Alexander building a wall against Gog and Magog, however, is not found in the oldest Greek, Latin, Armenian, and Syriac versions of the Romance. Though the Alexander Romance was decisive for the spreading of the new and supernatural image of Alexander the King, blah, 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 the Barry episode is not there, right? So, if anything, they got that idea from the Quran, right? And like that's really, even if you try to refute all of these, you would probably find that to be the common thing. It uses a lot of like Jewish sources, and then you look at the Jewish sources, the earliest manuscripts are like 12th century. So you're gonna have to prove that that particularly part of the book was in there before the Quran in order for you to conclude that the Quran took from it. And that's it.